Hello everyone. In this session we're going to be talking about row cleaners and opening of the seed trench. My name is Gabe Bergman and I'm an integrated solution specialist out of the Hutchinson location. So we're going to start from the front of the planter and work our way back. So first thing I want to do is make sure that our toolbar is 20 to 22 inches from the ground, and that's going to be done using our planter wheels. Once we've done that, we want to make sure that our parallel arms and our toolbar are level with the ground. And that's going to be done using the hitch height on our tractor. This is going to make sure that we have, optimum conditions for our downforce and for our true V openers to do their job. Next thing we're going to look at is row tillage options. So on our ME5 planters, so our non-electric drive planters, we have the option of floating row cleaner with the unit mounted coulter, just a straight unit mounted coulter, and our screw adjust unit mounted coulter. So these are going to be systems that you have to get out of the tractor to adjust. And when we step up to our Seedstar 4, 5E, and ExactEmerge planters, then we're going to go to our easy adjust row cleaners. So those are an option from John Deere. Those are going to be done from the cab with pneumatic air pressure. And, we still have the option of our, unit mounted coulter and our mechanically straight adjustable ones. But with this system, it really makes optimizing those row cleaners and coulters for this ground conditions a lot easier. It can be done straight from the cab. So to adjust those row cleaners in our Seedstar 4, we're going to go to our population at a glance, and we're going to click on our row cleaners button. And we got a couple different options. So right here over to the right, you can see that we can lower our row cleaners or raise our row cleaners completely out of the way. And then we have our presets 1, 2, and 3 for increased levels of residue. So next thing I want to focus on here is our down pressures. So that's going to be one of the two airbags that are on these row cleaners, and that's going to be pushing the linkage down. And so our next one is up pressure, and as the name implies, it's going to be the other airbag on there pushing up. So the combination of the pressures in these two bags are what's going to determine our resistance to movement. So how well those are going to float across the ground, as well as what position those are going to be in. So if our up pressure is higher than our down pressure, then obviously our row cleaner is going to be up a little bit higher. And if both those combined are high, then we're going to have a lot of resistance to movement. So just the opposite, if both the pressures are low, then the resistance is going to be low and we're going to be able to float over the terrain a lot more. So next thing we want to talk about is inspecting our row cleaners and opener blades for position. And what we want to do is make sure that our coulter is, no more than about a quarter to a half inch, above our seed trench. And we don't want it either in the bottom of or below our seed trench because we don't want to disturb that soil. It'll kind of prevent us from making a good seed trench if our coulter blade's too low. So a way you can do this is in the shop, just put a 2x6 underneath it and lower it down so the opener blades are touching, and then measure the distance from the 2x6 to the coulter, and that'll tell you how far above the seed trench that coulter is going to be. So next thing we want to do is inspect our opener blades. So when these things are new, they're 15 inches in diameter, and we want to replace those blades if they'll be down to 14 inches before planting season is completed. So even if when you inspect them at the beginning of the season, they're 14 1/4 inches, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be good. And I don't really know anybody that likes replacing planter blades in the middle of planting season. So it's probably a good idea to go ahead and replace those if they're going to be down to 14 inches before planting's over. So I also want to make sure that our edge contact point is adjusted correctly. And the way we can do that is taking 2 business cards, slide them from the bottom and the top until they kind of hold themselves in place. And we want that distance between 1.5 and 2.5 inches. So kind of right in the middle there at 2.5 inches is going to be our optimum, making sure we're opening that seed trench effectively, but also not, being too hard on our hardware by having too much contact. And that can be adjusted by using these shims, either taking them out we're putting them in. Want to make sure that we put an even number of shims on either side. Want those openers centered, provide equal wear on both sides. Also want to make sure that our scrapers are in good condition, making sure that they're doing a good job of cleaning off those opener blades as they're coming around. If they're worn out, want to make sure we get those replaced. Next thing we want to do is inspect our gauge wheels and make sure that the tires look good, that the wheels themselves look good. And then we want to look kind of a little bit deeper here and look at our what we call our mustache. A lot of us call it, but it's our rocker. Basically what the gauge wheel is going to pivot on when it contacts the arm here. So I also want to make sure that the top of these arms are in good condition. If the nice thing about these is they're symmetric. So if you're getting a pretty good gouge in the top here, your distance, your depth isn't going to be right. So we can actually swap those from side to side and get a nice fresh edge on the top for that rocker to come in contact with. We also want to make sure that our seed tube guard's in good condition. It's critical that our seed tube stays in good shape, for good singulation, good population control. And the way we do that is making sure that our guards are good. We also have the option of a spoked gauge wheel. We can get these from the factory, or if you currently have, full gauge wheels, then we can field install these as well, and you can order those through parts. And this allows for a lot more flow through of trash as well as, mud, and making sure that those things don't get packed full of junk, while we're planting. So next thing we want to talk about is our gauge wheel adjustment. So why is this important? Our gauge wheels are, responsible for two main things, and that's our planting depth as well as our seed trench creation. So, it's not just controlling our depth, we're actually using the lip of that gauge wheel to form the top of our seed furrow. So that's critical for good germination, making sure that our seed trench is formed well, but also not compacted. So are these gauge wheels adjusted correctly? As most of you probably guessed, no, they are not. And the reason being is because there's a whole lot of gap between them. As you can see here, we've actually got stuff, making its way in there, and we don't want that. We want that gauge wheel to be nice and tight to that opener blade. Actually, what we want to do is pull outward on the gauge wheels, because what's going to happen is, as we're going through the dirt's going to force these gauge wheels out even further away from the opener blades. So when we're adjusting these, go ahead and pull out on them to make sure that you've got its maximum outward movement taken care of, and we want that to be touching the opener blade, but not squashing up against it. So that'll make sure that we get that nice seed transformation and also keep junk from getting in here. So how do we do that? So before 2004, we had our shims, our lovely shims that you take off, move them from one side to the other, and that's how you made your adjustment. And then from 04 to 14, we had our screw type adjust, and these were great for changing, how we did that and the ease of adjustment on those. But the problem was, we had a lot of wear on these threads, and then they kind of tended to wear out. So what we did in 15 was we went to this style. And so as you can see, we've got our threads here for our adjustment, but then we've also got these nice smooth bearing surfaces. So it really allows, these areas right here to take the wear and keep these threads in good shape so we don't have that slop in our gauge wheel. So you can upgrade your planter to this style, with this AA103998 kit. That's available through parts and can be field installed. We also want to make sure that we're getting the maximum life out of our gauge wheel arms and bushings, so we want to make sure and grease that every day. So let's talk about planting depth a little bit. As most of you know, this T-handle is what's going to control our depth. Each notch is going to be a 1/4 inch. And when we're measuring seed depth, we want to make sure that we measure from the seed to the soil profile. There's this little ridge that our closing wheels leave. We don't want to measure to the top of that. We want to measure to the top of our soil profile. So you know, kind of where our gauge wheels are riding, not where our closing wheels are making that little berm. You know, like I said earlier, the second thing that gauge wheels are important for doing is getting that trench nice and defined. You know, in this example, we've got a nice, you know, open trench. You know, we removed the closing wheel so it would stay open. We've got it, you know, nice and formed. It's not, we're not losing, our sidewalls aren't collapsing in, and there's not dry dirt getting in with that seed causing germination issues. But then again, we're also not compacting our sidewall here. You know, allowing for good root growth through that sidewall. Let those closing wheels close that trench from the bottom to the top. Get good seed
We've
to
got our
soil
row
contact.
cleaners
That all
down. We've
starts
got our
with the
closing
gauge
wheels
wheels.
down.
So making sure that
And we've got our downforce applied.
adjusted
That's
correctly
really
is
how we
critical.
want to look for that good seed trench.
So where do we look for that seed trench? That's going to be right behind the gauge wheels and before the closing wheels.